Hello and welcome to the third and final video in my series on the Dash8 Q400 tutorial flight from Majestic. Okay, so we're approaching 10,000 feet, at which point we'll go through our 10,000 feet checks. And for those we'll set the barometers to the local pressure 29.97. I've got mine set up for European settings, so I can't set it directly to 29.97 on the captain's PFD. I set it to the closest I can. Fasten seatbelt lights on and the landing lights on, and that's us pretty much set now until we pass the Habs waypoint. So for now it's just a case of maintaining the speed at around 230 knots or so. Getting myself ready for the approach. On the nav page I'll tune in and arm the approach. Good to go. I'm still showing ice detected on the engine display, and because of that, although the tutorial flight says that we should be turning the ice prevention measures off, I'm going to leave them on until we've got clear of the icing section. So the course set for our approach, we're pretty much just monitoring our way down now. Clear of the ice, so we'll turn the de-icing sections off. The next thing that the tutorial flight has us look out for is when we get a VNAV disconnect. I've never actually had that happen, so that's impossible to do. What I will do though, as we get closer to the next waypoint, is to set the heading to our current heading, switch over the autopilot to heading mode, set the nav source to nav 1, select the approach, and then start handling the power levers. So there's the heading set to our current heading approximately. Leaving the autopilot in nav mode for now, we don't need to change it quite yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just started our approach. We would kindly ask you to fasten your seatbelts again and turn off all your electronic equipment.
Okay, that's changed over to heading mode now, which we need to do so that we can activate the approach, capture the localizer and glide slope. Approach selected, you can see the localizer and glide slope indicators come up on the PFD. They're in white because we haven't captured anything yet. We've armed them, but they're not active yet. Lovely weather. Reminds me of the UK. 1,000 feet to go then till 3,000 feet, which is our initial approach fix altitude. The localizer just been captured now. As you can see, the background's gone to green, the lettering in black. It's now changed to indicate that we have captured the localizer and we are flying onto it now. Green text on the black background. And the glide slope is being captured now as well. Actually, scratch that. We have Alt star to indicate that we are just coming down to the selected altitude. Star removed from the Alt star indicator to show that we are at our selected altitude. I guess it uses a margin of error here because the altimeter was showing 3040, but so now we have the localizer captured and we are looking for the glide slope. Set flaps to 5 degrees. I'm showing that by hand, but actually it's quite tricky to get it into the right detent when doing this by hand, so for the later section I may well use my joystick switches to set the correct settings for the flaps. Reducing the speed down now so I can get to the gear lowering speed. But at 10 miles out I might leave it just a little bit longer. Once the gear's down, of course, we will start to slow down. Glide slope's now captured. Starting to descend. I need to pull back on the throttle. Good time to lower the gear, help me to slow the aircraft down. And with them down and locked, I can select flaps to 10 degrees. As you can see, difficult to get into the detent and keep it there. But that's all good. Everything is looking fairly squared away now. Localizer and glide slope captured. Gear down, flaps at 10 degrees. As I come below 2,000 feet, I'll start thinking about turning the bleeds off and setting the condition levers up for maximum. Around now I can set our landing flaps for 15 degrees. Now whatever the reason, the switch got confused and changed it to 5, and as you can see the pitch of the aircraft is completely wrong for what we need to do, so a quick reset of the flaps to the correct setting, and I'm going to need to do some fighting with the throttle now to get the speed right. Our V approach speed should be around 130 knots. And that seems to have brought it back under control. When I've flown this route before, I found that the autopilot seems to bring me in, almost dragging the aircraft in from the left hand side of the centre line onto the centre line itself. And for the instructions, when I followed them before, I generally leave switching off the autopilot until I am 100 feet above minimums. But for this one I'm going to take it off earlier so I can hand fly the last section of the approach and try and get us a bit closer to the centre line. Otherwise I find myself landing a bit too far to the left of the centre line for my liking. Let's clear the distractions out the way and just focus on getting to the right landing spot. I'm using Fly Tampa scenery for Montreal here. As you can see, making adjustments now to bring us closer to the centre line. For some reason I don't seem to have a Pappy or a Vassi here, I'm not sure why. And I'm going to use it as my excuse for omitting to descend at the correct rate, because you can see here I'm actually a bit high. I should be coming down, but I'm not. I catch it, so I push the nose down a little, pull back on the throttle, and try and flare at the right place.
20, 10.
And maybe flare a little too early because I'm holding off and I need to get myself down on the ground and slowing down. Still, there we are. A fairly gentle landing for a Crash 8, I think. No need for reverse thrust here because the runway is so long. Just slow us down naturally and then use a bit of braking before taking this high-speed exit on the right now. After using the controls to get us landed down nicely and safely and on the centre line, I find that the joystick, which takes over control for the pedestal control for the steering, is a bit oversensitive, as you can see from my corrections here. Okay, to save us an interminable video, which is just about taxiing around the airport to get to a stand, I'm just going to get to the first available stand. One thing that doesn't work so well for us as flight simmers, I think, is the way that the taxi markings are indicated at this particular airport. Instead of having a nice taxiway line coming off the taxiway routes that are shown here, instead we have these square markers that are away to one side of it, which we would use to line up on. And there you can see it just ahead of us now for gate number 17. The trouble with that is if you are looking straight ahead out of the cockpit window, then they're not visible, of course, so you need to be maintaining a good look out to the side, and even when you are, you cannot see the gate number until you're practically on top of it. So a bit of a challenge to ensure that you're at the right gate on this particular airport. Still, here we are, and that's us arrived, so we'll need to put our parking brake on. And then we'll want to move our condition levers back to start and feather, and we leave them in that position for about 30 seconds to give the engines time to cool, so we don't go into a shock loading. Power levers are at disconnect, which they are. And we're just waiting for that small period of time before we move the condition levers down to the fuel off setting. And there we are, that has arrived at Montreal. That's the end of the sample flight tutorial from Majestic for the Dash8 Q400. I do hope you've enjoyed this series of videos, and join me, won't you, for some more advanced videos on the Dash8 Q400 as well as other sim aircraft here at FS Pro with me, Mr. Cobalt Man. Thanks for watching, see you again soon.